are so excited to have y'all joining us and the FAA to be here for the Is Your Repair Station Ready? Navigating the new SMS requirements. This is going to be a 1-hour webinar, and the objective of the webinar is to inform and prepare US-based FAA certificated repair stations holding or seeking EASA Part 145 approval about the new safety management system, which we're going to be calling SMS. I always try to make sure we say the acronyms out there first, but if you have any questions on acronyms that are used, please just feel free to put that in the box. But requirements and compliance deadlines. Just a cute few housekeeping requirements. If y'all have any questions, we really would love to take those from the industry. We do have some prepared. Please put any questions in the Q&A box. You should see that at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to see that. Also, if you guys, so the questions go in the Q&A, if you all can use the chat to share with us what trepidations you may have on this topic, being able to meet the compliance deadlines, what trepidations on SMS, anything you really want, NATA and the FAA executives here that are joining us to know. So if we can go to the next slide, Jillian, thank you so much. I am Jenny Ann Urban. I am NATA's Vice President of Regulatory Affairs. So I have the pleasure of working with these wonderful speakers on here. We have Mr. Jackie Black, who is the Division Manager of AFS 300, the FAA's Aircraft Maintenance Division. And then we have Ms. Kavehi Lum, the Division Manager of AFS 900, the FAA Safety Analysis and Promotion Division. And then we have one of my favorite people, colleagues at NATA, is Randy DeBerry. Well, they're all my favorite, I should say. But Mr. Randy DeBerry, our NATA Senior Technical Advisor, also retired from the FAA. So we've got a lot of agency expertise here to be able to answer these questions. So thank you, Jackie, Kavehi, and Randy, so much for taking the time. And a big thank you to your teams for helping put this together as well. I want to go ahead and get started on a bit of background. So Jackie, can you please give us a bit of background on why these changes are taking place and provide a regulatory overview for our audience members?
Absolutely. And thank you, Jenny Ann, for the invitation to join you today to help get the word out about SMS implementation and Part 145. It's a pleasure to be here. So from the FAA perspective, why SMS and 145 is happening and the way it's happening. We'll go dive a little bit into that. The most urgent implementation for SMS and 145 was sparked when the European Union revised its continuing airworthiness regulations to require SMS for their MROs, their maintenance organizations. Subsequently, the US and EU Bilateral Oversight Board, who oversees our bilateral agreement, they identified this as a difference between the United States regulatory requirements and the EU regulatory requirements. And what that results in is what we refer to as a special condition. The Bilateral Oversight Board signed a decision, number 13 decision, on February the 10th of 2025, making SMS a special condition under Annex 2 of the US-EU bilateral agreement. These changes impact the US-based FAA repair stations who hold a EASA certificate in the United States. So the big picture in this is that in June of 2025, EASA and FAA signed the Maintenance Annex Agreement, MAG Change 10, and it went into the entry into force date is October the 10th of 2025. I would add that this is actually later implementation than what they had in Europe. So Change 10 incorporates the SMS special conditions, which requires EASA Part 145 certificated repair stations in the United States to establish, implement, and maintain a safety management system that meets the requirements of 14 CFR Part 5. Participation in the FAA's SMS voluntary program, referred to as SMS VP, satisfies that requirement. That was something we negotiated with EASA specifically. So the development of an SMS or adoption of a third-party SMS can be considered, provided that it is fully integrated into the company's culture and procedures, and it meets Part 5 requirements to participate in the FAA's voluntary program. The key documentation that kind of is the reference point for this is the FAA's information for operators, info number 24007, which we revised on July the 8th to provide some critical detailed guidance on compliance deadlines and requirements for the SMS. We strongly encourage that repair stations, carefully review this info. It's plain language, it's easy to understand, at least we hope it is. And it outlines the specific actions and timelines to comply with EASA 145 approval. Understanding that content is essential for ensuring that your organization's compliance is upheld and it avoids potential disruptions to your operations.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jackie, for that critical information. And just a reminder for everyone, I saw a couple people, attendees hop on. If you have any questions, please do put that in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And again, please use the chat to let us know kind of what trepidations y'all are having about this. So thank you again, Jackie, for that key information. And I'm also going to try and put the key documents that Jackie has referenced in the chat, links to those, and they also will be sent in a follow-up email for all attendees. So Mr. Randy, over to you. Can you now talk to us about the key deadlines, pathways to compliance, and recent guidance that has been issued?
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Jackie, thank you so much. I appreciate the, I'm sure people appreciate the background and the history on why, right? So I guess the next critical phase of this would be the deadlines, because some's come and gone and they still are coming. So as everybody should know, February the 10th of 2025, if you're applying for a new EASA Part 145 certificate, or perhaps reinstating one after this date, you're going to need to be fully compliant and implemented before submitting your application. And as of today, I do not know of, and Jackie or Kabehi made that there's no provisional plans. Is that correct, Jackie?
That's my understanding as well, Randy.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And then as Jackie mentioned, on October the 10th of 2025, for existing EASA repair stations, this is your critical first checkpoint. So you're going to have to revise your EASA supplement to include a statement confirming that your SMS ready or has been implemented. Or if it's still in progress, SMS policies, procedures will be developed and implemented, and the declaration will be submitted to the FAA no later than December the 31st of 2025. And here's a key reminder I think is important. Once you submit your declaration to the FAA stating that you're SMS compliant, the inspector workforce will go into the SAS database and set up a reconfiguration, which means that is going to change the way that you are being overseen. And when they come out to take a look at your operations, they will be now targeting all their questions towards SMS related topics, issues, and everything that goes in line with being SMS compliant. So please, if you're not ready, make sure you have open and effective communications with your FSDO. My advice is I wouldn't submit it in a vacuum, and just work closely with your FSDO. They can answer most, if not all, your questions. And of course, Jackie's group's here to help you and to avoid pitfalls. And believe it or not, they are there to help. So remember, once you submit your plan, the configuration status will change, and they will be surveilling you as if you have an SMS program. December the 31st, 2025. This is your final compliance deadline. By this date, you must fully develop, implement, and integrate your SMS. Submit your signed declaration of compliance endorsed by your accountable manager. And remember, that declaration is not just paperwork. It confirms your SMS meets 14 CFR Part 5 and aligns with AC 120-92, and that you're actively functioning within your organization. How to comply. Whether you're starting from scratch or you've already had some safety practices in place, again, new applicants after February the 10th, 2025, you must be fully SMS compliant before your application. Existing certificates by October 10th. Update your EASA supplement with either your SMS status or your intent statement. And by December 31st of 2025, you must submit your SMS declaration of compliance. If you already have a safety or quality system in place, I would highly recommend that you start with a gap analysis and compare what you do now to what is in the Part 5 requirements. Consider using the FAA's SMS Voluntary Disclosure VP as a guide. It's an accepted path, and it's a start of a solid foundation. The key guidance, as they've been bookmarked, is AC 120-92. It provides a comprehensive guide to implementing SMS, and Info 24007 covers your deadline, scope, timing, and then Info 24014 outlines acceptable methods of compliance, including what Mr. Black talked about was the SMS VP. Also, check out the FAA Aviation Safety Outreach, and be sure to get access to DRS. It's the Dynamic Regulatory Systems for the SAS data collection tools and inspector resources. And going back to working with your field office, I'd highly recommend, once you get configured for SAS and SAS for SMS, ask the inspectors for the DCTs. That will help you set up your design, and then it'll also help you with the questions that they're going to ask you, so you can be better prepared to make sure that all your SMS meets the requirements. And as I like to say, if everybody's cooking from the same kitchen, everybody knows what's in the ingredients, then that cake's going to taste the same. So it's not a secret. It's not a mystery to what the FAA uses to do their oversight. It's pretty straightforward. It's not like the old days when Kaveh, Jackie, and I started out. We'd go into a repair station and they'd ask you what set of manuals you want. So those days are long behind us, and it's more standardized and an acceptable method. So everybody should be cooking from the same cookbook.
Thank you so much, Randy. And I loved the background a little bit. We have the next generation at Randy's place. So excited about SMS, as you probably heard a little bit. And so I hope you all are getting as excited to comply with SMS, whether it be 135 or 145. Just one more announcement, because I did not realize that the chat is not working the way that a Zoom chat usually works. If you do have any of the trepidations or Q&A, please put those in the Q&A box. Do not utilize the chat. And any of the resources that were mentioned, whether it be the infos or the Mag 10, you can go to NATA's website for this event where you did register. You will also be getting an email afterwards. So thank you so much for that background, Randy, and the critical deadlines, we're impacting repair stations and the compliance pathways.
And there's one last thing I want to add, Jenny, Ann, before we move on. Who's not affected? And currently right now, if you're just a regular FAA Part 145 and you're not doing EASA, currently this does not apply to you. But I would say that industry is moving closer towards that type of a system around the world. So, even if you're not affected today, it is definitely worth preparing for the future. And that's by having an effective audit program to make sure that you identify all your hazards and your risk and mitigate those, and ensure that you don't create any residuals from that. And that's where I'll stop, Jenny. Thanks. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you for the background on that, Randy. So, Kavehi, let's talk about SMS. I know this is your favorite topic. I love all the passion you and your team have around it. And, would really like to learn a little bit more about the implementation. Can you explain the FAA's SMS voluntary program and the alignment with EASA? Oh, you are muted, Ms. Kavehi.
I am muted. And that's it. No. Thank you, Jenny Ann. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. It is a passion of mine and happy to share. So you asked me, can I explain the FAA's SMS voluntary program and the alignment with EASA? And I'll start with just a reminder of what is SMS. And I'll give you the textbook version of what is SMS. And then I'll just like roll up the sleeves and let's just talk. Like, what is SMS? So the textbook version is, it's a systemic approach to managing safety, including organizational structures, accountabilities, policies, and procedures, blah, blah, blah. And it focuses on proactive hazard identification, risk management, and continuous improvement. For you 145s out there, though, isn't that similar to what your quality control manual does for you? To be intentional about looking for non-conformances in your system. So there's things that you do already, right? You want repeat business. You won't be that successful if you're not identifying systemic risks, if you will, or things that happen all the time. There's practices that you have in place that are either done by tribal knowledge. When I was out there in the industry, everybody's got the go-to guy or the go-to gal who's got a lot of that corporate knowledge. So what really SMS is asking is to be proactive about, putting that, if you could just bottle that up, record what that is so that you have a repeatable outcome, then that's fantastic. And so again, for the 145s, you have a QCM, and some of the QCM processes might satisfy the requirements of the Part 5 rule. That's why Mr. DeBerry said, do a gap analysis about what you got and what the rule requires. And that's a really good suggestion. So I just wanted to double stomp there. So for you 135s, I'm thinking that you might not have a quality control manual requirement, but you probably have processes in place to ensure that your airmen are qualified, stay properly qualified and trained to take on any work that you have, especially in the on-demand environment, when you just have to make sure that everybody stays current and qualified, your aircraft stay airworthy and are reliable and gets people from point A to point B safely and on time. So there's processes that you probably have in place. And again, back to Mr. DeBerry's double stomp on do the gap analysis. How do you do that? How do you validate that you're doing that? So SMS is really about memorializing those good things. And of course, Part 5 is it's performance-based rules, so it's not prescriptive. And you tell us how best you want to look for your hazards and identify your risks. Identify your hazards and mitigate your risks. Randy gave us a little vignette story about in Jackie, his and my day, we'd walk into an operator and he'd say, okay, this is what the rules are. And they say, well, what do you want my manual to say? That those days, double stomp again, those days are long gone. It's like, we want to benefit from your good practices and ask that you memorialize that in your processes. So transitioning from what is SMS to the voluntary program, we intentionally made a shift in our voluntary program. Prior to the new rule, the codification of Part 5, the voluntary program was independent of Part 5. You had to comply with Part 5, but to get there wasn't, I would call it, some would call it arduous process, but we had processes in place and it was meaningful that we had processes in place. Today, we really respect the industry and we are having those who want to participate in voluntarily, so the 145s, same requirement as those who are required to have it by the rules. So the 121s, the 135s, and the 91.147 organizations, meaning look at the rule, develop and implement your SMS, and send us a statement, a declaration of compliance that you have, and it's up and running. And when you do that, we change our oversight model and we come out and we validate your SMS activities. So we have there's a link on the safety outreach site that Mr. DeBerry talked about that that gives you the framework for the SMS voluntary program. And essentially, an aviation service provider can develop their SMS from scratch, or they can adopt a third-party existing SMS to fit their particular organizations. But either method you choose to implement needs to yield the result of an SMS that meets the Part 5 requirements applicable to your organization. When we codified the rule in 2015, and it made it a requirement for 121s to have an SMS, that former behavior of ours and the industry rang true, where SMSs satisfied the FAA and then they sat on people's shelves. And that's not what we want today, which is why we are taking a different approach to having SMSs being developed and implemented by the industry. And because we trust you all, we trust you folks are doing great work, and we trust that you will be able to best tell us that you have it developed and implemented. We will change our model when we do our oversight, in that when you tell us that it's developed and implemented, if you send us a manual revision, if you know what triggers safety risk management or systems analysis, it's a change in policy, a change in process, a change in organizational structure. So we will use those opportunities to ask the question, was this driven by a new hazard you identified? Is this to a risk control that you want to put in place? Is this even part of your safety management system? That's what we're going to try to change our workforce to be a little bit also proactive in how we evaluate the functioning of your safety management system. These elements that I just described, we have coordinated them with EASA. So we have aligned our requirements. There are gaps between flight standard, the FAA's SMS and EASA's SMS. But the bilateral, for the 145s, your bilateral addendum or your EASA supplement will cover those gaps. And we were intentional of making sure that the CAAs are aligned, because today we're talking EASA, but we did the same thing with Singapore and with CAA and other countries to make sure that what we don't want is duplicative work for the service providers, or worse yet, contradictory work. So the CAAs were intentional about being aligned to reduce the workload on your system. And for EASA, SMS documentation must be incorporated into your repair station's manual system, including the EASA supplement. That's just a little bit different than FAA's requirement, but for those that want EASA, just know that that's one difference. So ultimately, what we want is integration with your daily operations is essential, not just a paperwork exercise. SMS should be scalable to the size and complexity of your organization. It should be, especially in the maintenance arena, we talk about human factors. It should be a practice that happens just innately rather than something that you have to force it to happen. And we'll talk later as you mature about safety culture, because we believe as your culture improves, your ability to find the effectiveness out of SMS improves, and it becomes innate, second nature to your business. There's a bunch of support resources. Some were already mentioned, but here's a few others. AC 12092 has helpful information on implementing an SMS. Our 8900.1 order, volume 17, chapter 3. It actually was just published on July 17th. So it now should say what I just shared, some of what I just shared. So that's available through our DRS. And then again, our safety outreach website has additional information. Again, Jenny Ann and Randy, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I hope you found the information I shared value added. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kavehi. And just a couple of things that you said that I think, are really key and kind of reminded me of also something the audience should be aware of. So one of our NATA members has a very good quote, and it's safety is not a competition. So we really do want everyone's sharing information. The safer we are as an industry, the safer, everybody is. And so we do have a NATA maintenance committee as well as a NATA maintenance advisory board. If you are interested in joining either of those, please let me know. We do a lot of great information sharing there. And then as Kavehi, Randy, and Jackie have all talked on, this is a different model of approaching SMS. This is not, and this is, we love our FAA partners, but I want y'all telling the FAA how you're going to comply, how you're going to succeed at this versus them having to tell you how to succeed, or that you need to check each box. It's not about checking the boxes. It's not about hiring an attorney. I'm an attorney, so I can say that. It's not just about that. You really want practical implementation skills. So just some key things they touched on. Again, put the Q&As in the box. And then we also have our first question and answer from the audience. And then we have some more that have been sent ahead of time. So does this to any of our panelists now? This question is, do we know if in the future this will be a part of the production approval holders? That was the question in the chat, the PAHs.
I'll add that. So I don't know that. Sorry. The true answer is I don't know. But during the rulemaking process, we talked about PAHs and we landed on what was actually published, which is certain type certificate holders with production certificates.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And Kavehi, I would add that, there are other kind of complex SMS situations where you have multiple hats that you may be wearing as a company. And I know that some larger companies have looked at a corporate SMS so that it's not, they don't have 5 different SMSs for the 5 different types of businesses they do, right? So that's one of the great things that Kavehi's team has done to get out of the way of, implementing a safety enhancement. Some of our old processes was very burdensome on the front end to gain FAA approval, and it was a bureaucratic system, and it worked really well. But we also identified that it would work better if the applicant or the corporation had more control over the product, they have more equity in it, and the adoption rate was a big concern too. If we stand in the way of adopting SMS, we're not helping safety. So we made it as simple as possible to adopt, get SMS implemented as quickly as you can, and then we will surveil against it. And hopefully it will mature over time as those audits and the correspondence goes back and forth. But in general, SMS is it's just good business.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jackie. So the next question is, and you all have touched on it a little bit, but what is the first step? A lot of times we hear SMS or new requirement goes into place, and it can be a little overwhelming, especially we know on business side of aviation, it's a lot of smaller entities. But what's the first step that a repair station that hasn't started an SMS implementation can take? And I know that I'll say now triple stomp on, what Kaveh had said earlier is conducting the gap analysis. But are there other, first things that they should be thinking of?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, Jenny Ann. I mean, from the very beginning, and I know Jackie and Kavehi will reemphasize this, people were so concerned or really concerned about scoping and making sure that the SMS program or the implementation of this was not this huge monster that was going to be standardized and everybody's going to have to march to the same beat of the drum. So focus on making sure that it's right sized, and then SMS can be scaled to your operation. And I would highly recommend, working with the FAA and industry trade associations such as NATA, and there's a lot more out there that offers these types of programs for you and then templates. And really, I would focus on having a conversation with my CMT are the folks that oversee you. And again, going back to when you put in your SMS program, they're going to reconfigure you. If you haven't implemented one yet, ask for those tools, because it will really give you some insight on what you need to do to drill in, because what they're overseeing you with is the tools that's been configured to your operation. So the SMS and the SAS that is our system, they've taken a huge step forward in making sure that from the very beginning, from conception to birth of a certificate, that you're configured so that you're being asked and oversaw and surveilled by the way you're currently operating. So we don't want to oversee you if you're a 10,000 employee repair station, and when in fact you may be specialized services. So really right sizing is the first thing that I would start with. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much. And I'm not sure if the participants or the attendees can see the Q&A, but one of our very famous maintenance committee members has put his thoughts in the Q&A. And so I'm just going to kind of touch on a couple of things that he had recommended. You know, he said that his repair station has participated in the voluntary SMS program, and they found that documenting all the things that they were severely missing, they had to make sure that everybody was trained the same way within the SMS system. But really, one of the things he focuses on, and that I love to talk about as well, is ensure that you are making your SMS work for your company. You know, you can't just go out, and I can't just go steal Randy's SMS program and say it's going to work for mine. You need to use a conditions-based approach, really seeing what conditions you are facing as a repair station. And so it's just not a cut and paste model. Don't just be trying to submit your declaration of compliance. You really need to make sure that make it work for you instead of changing it to meet somebody else's ideas, and then formalize what you're already doing. Again, SMS is a management system. You likely already have a lot of management systems in place. So thank you, Mike, for sharing your expertise there. To the next question, talking about, leadership commitment. Kaveh, you kind of talked on this, but sometimes, with leaders, they don't always understand why we're having to do a new requirement. Is it just a new rule coming out? How do we check the box? But how do you what suggestions do you have to get leadership buy-in and to really start that positive safety culture throughout your entire repair station?
So it's hard because I'm so passionate about this, and I was passionate about this when I was in the industry, and especially with the organizations that do international operations. You have to have an SMS in place in order to operate commercially, or well, we used to, and that still exists today. The ICAO requirement for SMS existed long before the FAA codified the requirement. So that's why we have infos out for those organizations, the 125s, the 91Ks that do ops internationally without an SMS. We have processes in place to ensure that they meet those standards, or stand the risk of potentially having their aircraft not be able to take off after it's landed for not having an SMS in place. But to get leadership buy-in, there has to be a conversation about what is the, leaders are always about what is the return on the investment? Is the squeeze worth the juice? But a lot of the systems that are already in place are in place so that you can make sure that you have a repeatable, safe process. And it doesn't have to be the recording of the SMS. I'm really trying to emphasize that Randy touched on this. It doesn't have to be a dissertation. It has to fit you and your needs. What we learned from some of the 121s is the leaders were very keen on, let's satisfy the FAA, let's make this right. And it was too complex, even for these large organizations. And then they found that not only was it sitting on the shelf, they were not performing. So to a leader, then I'm just wasting resources in managing this thing. And they saw it as a thing rather than a system. So in supporting SMS, I wish SMS was not like, let's talk SMS. Then it becomes a thing rather than let's talk about how we can be better at identifying our hazards. Let's talk about how we can be better about managing the risks that we're seeing. Let's talk about when I fly into Reno, we're always having this issue. Let's talk about whenever Cavey sends their aircraft to us, it's got these problems. That is SMS.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to one of our other maintenance committee members who put in there that he also recommends with leadership buy-in is signing the safety commitment. Randy, did you want to touch on that?
I
Oh,
do.
absolutely.
Yeah. Signing the document is the first start. And there's an old saying that my mother I used to get in trouble a lot for this, and was telling her what I was going to do, but didn't do it. Right. So saying you're going to do something and then backing it up by your actions, that is where, culture change really, really starts to take effect. And it takes a while to change a culture. They say 5 to 7 years to change a culture. We've been working on this for a long time. I know Flight Standards has too. So signing the document is the first step, but it's not saying what you're going to do. It's doing what you say you're going to do. So thanks, Jenny.
Thanks so much, Randy. And yes, Jackie, over to you.
So, absolutely. I double down on all of what Randy just said and what Cavey said. I would add another level of what I would expect in a successful implementation. Depending on the size and complexity of your repair station, the employees on the floor may or may not know the CEO or the 119 people that well. And if it's a large organizations, odds are there's not a high degree of trust in their CEO. It is only gained, that trust is only gained whenever they hear the same message throughout the ranks of the management team. So it's really important to the people turning wrenches, the person they trust the most and the person they'll listen to and watch their actions is their immediate supervisor. So unless they're all in lockstep and they're backing up their words with deeds, to Randy's point, it's going to be a book on the shelf.
Absolutely. That I think is one of the most key points I've heard someone say in that capacity, Jackie, and I absolutely agree with you. And just touching on, I think it was something Cavey also said is don't make it too complex. One of our members, Jet Logistics, they have a 145 repair station, and he says this publicly to the CEO of that, so I can steal his quote. Thank you to Ashley for his quote, but he always talks about how they started off with an Excel spreadsheet. That was the system they utilized at the beginning to start their SMS and to start hazard reporting and to start those. You don't need an expensive, complex system to get started. That worked very well for the conditions that they were facing. Now, have they possibly changed it moving forward? Absolutely. But don't make it too complex and don't think yes, there will need to be resources put into this, but you can do it, while keeping cost as a factor in that. So we are good. I'm loving seeing these questions in the Q&As and keep those coming. So the next question we have from the audience is, can you give us a quick rundown on the corporate SMS process, getting multiple locations under one umbrella? Who would like to answer that?
I'll take that.
Yes.
So yeah, we are excited about this venturing into this new space of corporate SMS. So when we speak corporate SMS, it includes, you could have a design holder, a manufacturer that's required to have an SMS with a repair station that they use to maintain their products, with a 135 or 121 that they also have to fly their products, so you have like the corporate parent company with multiple subsidiaries under it. So that's one type of structure. We have the other type of corporate structure, that SMS that we're looking at, where you have a parent company 145 with multiple satellites organizations. And then we have to add even more complexity, where we have organizations that are 145 repair stations, but are also in foreign domiciles, dormant foreign bases. So we have multiple variations, and especially on the foreign soil, you have even potential TCPC holders, every manufacturer design organization that are required to have an SMS, and they're also not within the US. So there we have multiple variations of corporate SMS. And we are entering this space gingerly, asking for industry support. But we have the order in place that'll help us guide the. So let's start with the senior level. So the declaration comes from the corporate, whoever the corporate SMS declares as the accountable manager, if you will. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the actual term. And then under that organization, especially if you got a production holder, design holder, they are not certificated. The organization is not certificated, the product is. They have to have a process spec or quality spec in place. But then you have the repair station that has a certificate with an accountable manager. So we're currently in the process, and we have actually a repair station, a parent corporation that owns 13 repair stations and satellite repair stations working with us so that we can memorialize and document how does that structure look like? Because each one of those 145 independent entities must also have a declaration to satisfy the Part 5 rule. But all of that falls under the corporate SMS umbrella. So we are leaning into the space of accepting, can it be signed by the corporate manager and applied at the local level, or signed at the local level and applied, the corporation is responsible to make sure that everybody at the local sites also have the declaration in place. And why that is important is to what Jackie said. Especially in a corporation, if the corporate manager, in this case, what we're working with now, a company's main base is on the East Coast, but they have stations across the US. So somebody who's in Hawaii, who maybe doesn't even know that my parent is in the East Coast, I'm going to listen to my supervisor and my repair station manager. And at the local level, right, at the wrench, as a mechanic, I have no idea if I have a satellite repair station, if I have a repair station certificate, if I'm right. So often at the field level, at the line level, they don't have that fidelity or clarity. So the corporate SMS, multiple variations, within the FAA between Aircraft Certification Office and the Flight Standards Service. We are also working on how do we work on our data collection tools. Randy talked about our data collection tools. Air, if you're a design manufacturer under the corporate SMS, you have additional requirements under Air than Flight Standard does. And so we are shoring up our internal mechanisms so that it reduces the corporate SMS's hurdles, if you will, or gates that they have to go through multiple FAA organizations, because we recognize we're one FAA and we need to be consolidated in how we request information from the industry. And I ask that you give us grace. We are entering, like I said, we're entering the space gingerly, but we want to be successful at it. And we're going to lean on the success of the corporations that already operate under corporate umbrella and learn how they do that well, and how they connect the training, the policies. There's an ethics requirement, hazard identification requirement, record keeping requirement. And we don't describe how that is. We're asking the corporation to tell us how they will do that. I hope that was helpful, but what I'll do is I'll try to get a link to our corporate SMS information and get that to Jenny Ann so that she can provide that to all of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Kavehi, and I'm happy to send that afterwards to the attendees. Also, thank you to Mary in the audience. She did give a great recommendation that in your SMS initial and recurrent training, have your AE attend or record them talking about what SMS means to them. That's a great way to get leadership buy-in. Again, continue to put the Q&As in the chat or in the Q&A box, excuse me. I do want to talk a little bit about the EASA requirements, because sometimes, we might be familiar with working with you wonderful folks at the FAA, but we might not understand how it's all going to go with the EASA. So one of the questions is, will the participation in the FAA's SMS voluntary program be audited by EASA? Jackie?
Ooh,
Yes, over to you.
In general, no. The whole benefit of having a bilateral agreement with another country's aviation authority is leveraging the oversight responsibilities for that country. In other words, the EASA certificates that are in the U.S., over 1,400 of them for 145, those are all overseen and the responsibility of the FAA. Likewise, the FAA certificate repair stations throughout Europe is overseen by the EU. So in general, no, the EASA inspectors will not be overseeing the SMS in Part 145 within the United States. What they will do is ensure confidence in each other's abilities to do that oversight. So you may have heard, or you may have even been a party to a sampling inspection, where EASA sends a team over and they will visit several repair stations, and it's to assess whether or not the FAA is doing an adequate job of overseeing the special conditions that are imposed because of EASA requirements versus US. Then that's a reflection on the FAA, not direct reflection of the repair station. So EASA may darken your door one day to ask about SMS and your EASA supplement and other requirements of the bilateral, but they're doing it to assess whether or not the FAA is doing an adequate job in overseeing those certificates.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And in regards also to the EASA supplement, I do believe specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, you must include, the repair stations must include a clear statement about their SMS policies and procedures. And by the December 31st, 2025 deadline, so 6 months from now, they need to ensure that their supplement documents have how SMS is implemented and integrated into their operations. And really, it's if EASA and the FAA are completely aligned on that, they want to see that the SMS is fully woven into their organization's documented processes and actual practices. They don't want to just see this statement. Is that correct, Jackie?
Absolutely, and that should be no surprise, because that's exactly the types of things that we find oftentimes in their supplement. Repair station supplement needs to be tailored to your operation. SMS needs to be tailored to your operation. And I would add that today we're really focusing on EASA. It's not the only country that we are partnered with who is going to require an SMS program. So getting ahead of the ball game and implementing early will help prepare you if you hold certificates with Brazil or other countries. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So I'm going to skip down a question, and remember, we still have about 10 minutes for audience questions. This is your time to ask our wonderful executives here any questions that you might be concerned about. But what are some practical examples of hazards that a repair station's SMS should address? Any thoughts on that?
I can take a stab at it. I think that many of them are things that you're already finding in your repair stations. And it's things that you probably take care of and mitigate on the spot. You incorporate new procedures, or you address those risks already. And it's the common things that you come across, like tool and equipment, whether or not it's appropriate for the job, or whether it's maintained appropriately, and inventory, those kinds of things. Absolutely, human factors is a piece of that. How are you dealing with fatigue, for example, and how are you dealing with non-conformances that happen because we have humans involved? Mechanics aren't always the best at documenting things, and in SMS, just like in any mature organization, you want to document that you corrected something and why you did it, and so that you have that history and you can learn from it and evolve from it. And in the organization, you have so many requirements outside of the FAA as well. You have OSHA requirements, workplace safety issues that we're not directly related to, but man, wouldn't it be smart to incorporate some of that into your SMS so that it's a one-stop shop for identifying those risks. Communications challenges, that's something SMS can really help with. In broadcasting and building awareness throughout the organization, and helping to hopefully reinforce a culture that you already have. There's a safety culture, and so that no one's afraid to bring up issues, that they're not going to be blamed, or they're not going to get in trouble for it. So this is a more formalized way in some cases of helping them feel secure and raising concerns, and that you're interested in addressing the risk instead of the person, right? And every repair station's in business to make money. There's organizational pressures. There's on 121, there's absolutely pressure on launch times and being able to deliver and have aircraft available. We have those pressures, and an effective SMS will help address some of those challenges and find ways to mitigate the risk.
Thanks so much, Jackie, on that. Those are really key areas to understand the practical matters there. We have another question from the audience, and I'm going to take these two questions. If you guys do have questions afterwards, I'll be putting up where you can send those at the end. But John, great to see you again on the chat. He asked, how do we emphasize the need for organizations to use cross-functional teams to implement SMS when one department is responsible for safety and engineering implementation legs involving QA, QC, supplier management, HR, speeds implementation, and organizational awareness? So can anyone address that?
So I'll take that. What we are learning from organizations like IATA, international organizations that has been the leaders in pushing safety management systems throughout especially the corporate 121 industry, and other is BAO, is what I'm hearing is a tie between quality management, so those administrative systems that help to make your system function well, aligned with the safety systems that SMS requires. But the behavior should be the same in terms of identifying hazards and mitigating those risks associated with those hazards. The human factor behavior, as Jackie talked about, should be the same whether I'm fixing a safety issue or I'm fixing an administrative issue. So IATA used to publish a document. I don't belong to IATA. I'm not promoting them, but in the work that we're doing here within the FAA, we like to also look out in the landscape across our industry and with other civil aviation authorities to see the best practices that others have been applying. And that's one of the things that I found is How do you get this cross utilization is by taking the word safety out of it and just talk about a management system that we apply within an organization to help close the gaps on either non-conformance, non-compliance, hazards, and risk mitigation. And in fact, I think it was, I was in a meeting once, and I think it was Rick Perry from,
My predecessor at NATA, he's at AEA now, but he was
yeah,
NATA. He has
I
my
think it was Rick Perry that stood up and said, we should really talk about a management system. Because when you talk safety, people think, oh, that then it doesn't apply to me because that's only a safety related issue. But we're all interconnected. A system doesn't operate well without the people side. Right.
Absolutely.
So I hope that helped.
Thank you so much for that. I guess you got a heart on that. That was a good reaction. I've never
Thank
seen
you.
that. So that was very exciting, Kavehi. So I'm going to answer one last question before we get to the last little bit. If we can try and get it within about a 1 minute time frame. How can system analysis become more scalable? It says the word prescriptive must in 5.53 for any changes to procedures can become overburdensome for 22 location, 3,000 employee operations. Can there be some allowance or waivers for small changes?
Yeah. So sorry, you guys okay if I jump in? So with the system analysis, it doesn't have to be exhaustive for those editorial changes or the administrative changes. What we learned, Jackie and I, and this is a process that Jackie and I are learning too, when our teams make changes to our policies and our procedures, we have to do a system analysis as well and identify, are we introducing anything new? Then that's more than a system analysis, and that's an SRM. But if it's editorial, administrative, we kept it simple. It's a checkbox on our document control form that says, yep, we considered it and it's editorial. So again, please make it scalable to your needs. And I know 5.53 reads prescriptive, but it's intentional about, must do an evaluation when there's a trigger that falls under, that requires a systems analysis. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, Kavehi. And I know that there are still questions out there. We actually had quite a few others that we didn't have the chance to get to, but thank you for everyone just submitting those. On the screen right here, you'll see resources and support. So here is the FAA's Aviation Safety Outreach page where you can get additional resources, as well as direct questions or comments regarding the US-EU bilateral agreement to Jackie's division, the Aircraft Maintenance Division, using this phone number or email. And then any questions on the FAA SMS voluntary program, please contact your local flight standards office, certificate management team, or the safety management branch at these email addresses. Jillian, if we can go to the next slide quickly, thank you. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to Jillian for being our master of the webinar today, of, really master of ceremonies, being able to push that through. So NATA does have an air transport safety manager certification. We have partnered with the Department of Transportation Safety Institute. If you are a NATA member, you get a discount at this. So you can make sure if you sign up for that to do it through NATA's website, be logged in. If you have questions on that, I'm happy to answer. I got that. That was my second week at NATA. Great, wonderful program run by Roger Hood. So highly recommend that. We can go to the next slide. Also, NATA has some wonderful Partner Plus solutions that cover and really can help guide on SMS and different resources that you can utilize. Each of the partners that we'll put up you get a different, I don't know if I call it perk, but by being a NATA member, they have partnered with us to really illustrate their value for our members. So we have Vocus by Polaris Air, we have the report source, and then Jillian, if we go to the next slide. Thank you, AirTerra, as well as Wyvern as Wingman MRO. And I think, do we have any other slides, Jillian? Oh, and then of course, Aviation Safety Solution, the SMS experts. So make sure that you check out NATA's Partner Plus solutions. If you are interested in partnering with us, please also reach out to me. But again, we just really want to thank thank Kaveh, Jackie, and Randy and their teams for putting a lot of effort and being so willing to talk with the industry. It's great to see, the industry and the agency come together to really address these issues. But again, thank you, and I'm happy to direct any questions. Just send me an email and it will be on the follow-up email. So thank you again and have a wonderful day.